Imagine, in the moments of you watching this, you lose everything you've ever known, your home, your family, your identity. This happens every day to countless Congolese refugees, including the man you're about to meet, whose destiny called him to share his story.
Tatangwa teleche mwene mwilongo angawa mwito achwa inaseni na ule embanile mukimba mtema shiengale
It was one of those days in your life when like you think you are innocent and then your innocence is taken away. It's like at that time I was 15 and I was just this boy who dreamed to go to university, who dreamed to just finish his high school and then go to university and go on with life, and then from nowhere all your dreams are crushed.
That day that changed Oliver's life was October 26, 1996, marking the beginnings of the First Congo War. But it all began in 1994 Rwanda, during a conflict between the country's two major ethnic groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis. In the span of just 100 days, 800,000 Tutsis and pro-peace Hutus were murdered. The genocide displaced 2 million Rwandans, and Congo became their place of refuge. Then, on that very day that changed Oliver's life, the Rwandan army invaded the Congo in efforts to control Tutsi forces. This resulted in a civil war that would last decades, resulting in mass murder and displacement.
We were in class on that day, October 25th, because I will never forget that day. We were in class and from nowhere we had the shootings and started shooting and shooting. Like, okay, maybe this is just fun. Maybe what's happening, we don't know. And then the school had to send a few people to go and check on what's happening. Before we know it, the people who were sent out, they were killed. And then within 20 minutes, over 8 people were killed. And the school had to let everybody go, and parents started coming in. And because my 2 younger sisters and myself, one was 6 and the other one was 8 at that time, we were living 60 kilometers away from our parents in another village where my parents thought the place was more safe and okay for us to live. So we ended up going to the other village. And before we know it, the whole village where we were living in was crushed and crumbled, and people, we were stepping over dead bodies everywhere. It's like we were walking and trying to find our way to go where our parents lived, the next village. We couldn't, and we were so horrified, and I had to grab my 2 younger sisters and myself to start running for our lives. And while we were running for our lives, we'd be walking on the streets, and this is emotional, but you are running on the streets and the person beside you is shot. And then you wonder, like, am I going to survive this? But you keep on running and running, and then before you know it, the person on the other side is down and is shot. It's like, that day was one of those days in my life that I will never forget.
It took 2 days to walk that 60 kilometers back to their home village, and with nowhere to go, Oliver and his sisters slept in the forest, home to some of the world's deadliest snakes and wildlife.
By the time we got home, nobody was home. And then an hour later in our village, they started shooting again, and we had to run again for our lives to find another place, which we did, which I don't know, which was ridiculous, because I decided in my childish way of thinking, maybe we should go back to school, maybe someone will be at school. We had to walk again the 60 kilometers for 2 days, and going back to school, nobody was there. And even the whole process of going back to school, people were still like killing each other on the roads, and we were like hiding. We had to walk in the bush for 60 kilometers and step over thorns and anything. We were hungry. We haven't eaten anything for the last 2 days, and it was just survival. We survived. I was begging on the streets. I know what it means. I would wake up in the morning, go on the street, like beg, like, can you help, and can you help? That's what I did for 7 months, begging for my own, for food for myself and for my sister. And there are so many days where, like, because it was during the war, nobody had anything to give. But we spent days like eating. Like I remember that so many times we had like 3 days without any food, and there are times, and then we will wake up in the morning, and then you open the door, 3 dead bodies. It's like, and then you have to run for your life. You have to find another place. We used to take the banana leaves. I don't know. We grew bananas. You cut the banana leaves, and that's what you sleep on, and that's what we did for days, for all those months. Like, we would be taking banana leaves, and because we couldn't sleep in a house, we didn't have a house, and none of the houses were secure. So the only place we thought was secure was the forest. So we take the banana leaves and lay them on the grass, on the ground, and you sleep. You cover yourself with banana leaves, and that's what you sleep on.
It was another 7 months of pure survival, while the rest of their family was taken to a refugee camp in Tanzania. Until one day, when Oliver's mother escaped the Nyarugusu refugee camp and made the dangerous trip back to the Congo.
And then she came across me when I was begging on the streets, like in some dirty clothing, and I'm just like, I didn't have anything else. We only had the clothes we had since September. They were the only clothes we had on. I didn't have anything else, and then I'm just begging on the streets. I hear someone shouting, "Stop the bike, stop the bike," because in many parts of Africa, even in the Congo in particular, people will use their bikes as a taxi. So you'll be carrying someone on the back of your bike as a taxi. So someone was carrying my mom on the back of the bike as a taxi. And then I hear someone shouting like, "Stop the bike, stop the bike." She stopped the bike, and then I hear someone shouting, "It's my son." I couldn't believe. I thought maybe it's just like a monster or a ghost, or what is this? I couldn't believe it was my mom. And then she came close to me, like, said, "It's my son." I'm like, "No, I'm not your son." I denied. I told her, "I'm not my son. I'm not your son." I looked at her. She said, "No, I'm your mom." And then I had to ask her to show me her hand, so I could see the mark, because I know my mom has a mark and we have a similar mark. And I looked at her, "Oh, it's my mom," but I couldn't hug her because I had so much bitterness and so much anger and unforgiveness. Like, how did you leave us? I was so bitter and so bitter towards them, and that's how I met with my mom. So that's how it was, just like in those situations. She had never seen me begging, and she saw me on the streets and begging for life. She was very apologetic, but that didn't take the pain I had. I had so much pain and bitterness. And then after that, when my mom came, she had to decide to take her to the refugee camp in Tanzania. So, and again, that was another mess. Although it was okay in terms of safety because we didn't hear any shootings there, but it was another journey that changed my whole life.
The Nyarugusu Refugee Camp is home to 150,000 refugees and is one of the largest camps in existence today. I spoke with James Hayslip, a researcher who worked on a project with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in the Nyarugusu camp.
I was kind of surprised at how established it was. You know, in my naive imagination, I thought it would be a sea of tents. You know, and of course that's the kind of classic image of a refugee camp as portrayed on television. But this is a very established community, as I say, been there since '96. So people are given the opportunity to build their own mud houses, sometimes with corrugated roofs. So, you know, it's more or less like a typical African village would look like anywhere in that region.
And while the camp is established, living conditions are anything but ideal. Still, refugees are forced into staying because of the government's encampment policy.
The Tanzanian government have this encampment policy, so they're not allowed to leave the 28 square kilometers of the camp boundaries unless they get an official permit. I mean, in reality, they do because they have to. And I guess it's kind of turning a blind eye. But occasionally, refugees will stray further, or maybe come into conflict with somebody from the local community, and then they may get picked up by the police. And many refugees end up in local prisons because they've transgressed that encampment policy. The encampment policy of the Tanzanian government is problematic because it limits, it closes down one of the options, which is naturalization or integration in the local economy. So for as long as the Tanzanian government remain clear that, you know, these are refugees and they have to stay in this camp and they can't integrate, then their only other options are repatriation back to their home countries, which at the moment isn't an option, or resettlement. And given the sort of political climate in the West, not just in Europe, but also now in the US with Trump, that seems also less likely. And it's not that the US is going to be opening. And even Trudeau in Canada, I think, admitted that there's a limitation to how many new refugees they can take in.
But breaking the encampment policy was almost necessary for Oliver and his family, who struggled to survive on the rationed food distributed by the UN.
2 kilograms of beans and 4 kilograms of corn flour, and for 2 weeks, how can you survive on that?
And with more mouths to feed after Oliver and his 2 sisters joined their family in Nyarugusu, food was even more scarce.
What happened then was, like, because my sister and I came to Nyarugusu and we didn't have the ratio card, so we didn't even have food. We had to live on what my parents and my sisters were receiving, which was already minimal. Like, if they are only receiving for each one of them 2 kilograms of beans and 4 kilograms of corn flour, and then here comes 3 other people to rely on their meager food. But my parents and sisters were willing to share what they had.
Despite the efforts made by the UN to help camp civilians, Oliver felt left down.
Having lived in the refugee camp, like, it felt like everybody was working against you. You feel like the UN was just there to get whatever they are getting. These people they make huge salary, and here we are, like, we just want to survive. We need food, and many times we will hear, oh yeah, we were supposed to receive food on the Tuesday, and then you go there, there's no food, and 2 weeks after you hear that, oh, the food was stolen. Like, who stole the food? It kind of felt like everybody was corrupt and everybody was just working against you.
But James explains that the UNHCR is simply an international partner in distributing welfare within refugee camps, and it's local governments that set the terms. Still, those terms are often unethical. Oliver remembers the UN accepting rationed beans in exchange for school fees.
And I felt guilty because I'm here, I don't even have a ratio card, and I have to pay for school fees. And my sisters who have the ratio card, they have to sacrifice their own small meal, beans, for them to allow me to go to school. because my parents believed so much in school, and I did believe in school. So everybody in my family knew the only way to get out of this is for us to get an education. And they said, yeah, we'd rather go hungry for a couple of days and have you go to school. So that's how it was.
I visited Save the Children, an organization that works with refugee kids in Congo, to learn more about how refugee children face barriers to education.
Education is really the critical concern for Save the Children, for children needing to access school during a time of displacement. So we see increased numbers of sexual violence towards children in these areas where there's high presence of militias and armed groups. We've seen an 8-fold increase in attacks on schools by armed groups over the course of 2017. In the course of 2017 as well, we've seen high numbers of increase in recruitment of children into armed groups. And so the violence that's caused by fighting and then the consequences that has for children is of concern.
Yet, like most children determined to learn despite the barriers, Oliver found another way to pay for his school fees.
After that, we learned that I could do some business. I started going with these other young people who discovered that we could go cut bamboos in the forest and pay for school fees. It was so heavy and so hard. We would walk in the sun, like you'd be sweating like crazy, but we knew we have to do it. We'd rather die in the pursuit of education, and that's how it was for us. We'd rather die, but dying knowing that we lived for what we believed in.
And it was this pursuit that led him to one of the hardest decisions he had to make.
I started with my parents, my mom and dad, and told them, Mom and Dad, I'm tired of this life because I don't think there's any future for us. So for me here, living here, I finished my high school by that time and I couldn't see anything because you finish high school and maybe start making babies, and that was the only life that was there. I'm like, I don't think that's what I want to build with my life. I said, I have to go to the Congo. My dad looked at me and he said, like, I could see on his face like so much frustration, and he said, you're my only boy, you're my only son, you can't do that. You can't go to the Congo, because going to the Congo means death.
It would only make sense that Oliver's parents feared what would happen to their only son. On January 18, 2001, Congo's former leader, Laurent Desire Kabila, was assassinated. This caused deeper tensions between those who viewed Kabila as a leader who worked for independence and those who stood to gain from Congo's continued divide.
I think what really made me go back and decide like I have to work for peace was the whole idea, like the people of Congo. I've seen people struggling. I saw like during the war there's so many women who were raped, and I saw some of them. I remember a time when I came across this young lady. She must have been like 19, and she was just raped a minute, maybe a couple of minutes before my sister and I got there, and I could see the fear and the anguish and this lady seeking, just like begging for her own life, and I couldn't do anything. I was, I can't do anything. I can't help. I want to help, but I can't carry you, and that never left me. Those moments never left me.
Upon returning to his hometown in Lusenda, he was deathly ill with malaria.
I threw myself in Lake Tanganyika and just allowed myself to float on Lake Tanganyika. Just like remember those many moments of my life when everything seemed gone, everything was just strange. Lake Tanganyika was still there for me, and I could go there and just like allow myself to float, and in that flooding, I would feel the strength, and I drank some of its waters, and from there I came back to the house and I said, I'm healed.
And then, Oliver, along with dear friends and extended family, would lead weeks of peace and reconciliation workshops throughout Lusenda, a dangerous endeavor.
When you start talking about peace, everybody thinks of you as an enemy, because different malicious groups and tribes, they are like fighting, and people are fighting over land, the people, resources, and they don't want you to say like you want them to come together. So we were arrested 100 times. And there are times when we were just like in meetings like this, talking about peace and reconciliation with different communities, and someone jump in with a gun and start shooting. Before I knew it, I lost several friends, and people who are just like peacemakers, people who wanted to make a difference, and our desire to make a difference caused so much trouble for my colleagues and my friends.
His efforts to bring peace to the Congo also landed him in jail dozens of times.
It was really, really hard. They had taken 5 of us and they put us in this small. It's just like they had made this small house into jails, and we knew it wasn't jail because there was no way you get out of that. That's how they killed the people. They just took you and they put you in, and the next day you are gone. And they came in. My first friend was killed. He was gone, and I knew I was just waiting for my turn to come. And I was just praying inside me, God, you told me I was made for a purpose, and Grandpa's been speaking this over and over. How can I just go now without? I don't think I've lived my purpose yet. I could just smell death, and I could just see it, and I'm like, just part of me was like, okay, just kill me instead of just letting me go through all this. And then the other part of me was like, no, you are made for a purpose, and you just don't give up last minute. You can do this. You have to strive. And I prayed, and I sang some of my favorite songs in those moments, because that's what kept me moving, singing some of my favorite songs. And Grandpa, I could see him, like, because the two of us a few times, like, we would start singing, and he loved singing, and he will sing, and we sing some of these songs. God is so good in my mother tongue. Abecha wangine, abecha wangine, abecha wangine, wangine manga.
And while he survived one of the harshest Tanzanian prisons, rebel forces were searching for him after his release. Oliver crossed the border to Kenya to seek refuge once again. And then, after completing his undergraduate studies in 2007, his life was about to change forever.
I remember the day when they sent me this email, like, yeah, you're going to be sponsored to go to Canada. It's like, wow, I'm going to be sponsored to go to Canada, because I thought of Canada as this place where like dreams become true, and I guess like it's a place where like I can finally be in a safe place. I can finally be in a place where I can work and achieve my dream. Because for me it's not just about me. It's like I want to be able to work and not only provide for my family, but also be able to sponsor widows and orphans in the Congo. And I was super happy. That was it was in November 2008 when the email came, like, we are going to sponsor you to go to Canada. Like, wow. But again, the process took more than 2 years before I came to Canada. By the time I had to do the paperwork and then get the admission to come to Canada, it was over 2 years. But I was super happy, because I knew finally I will have a place where I can work, and I can be able to contribute to the economy of the country, and also be not only I guess I had been called a refugee for so long, and I was wanting to have a place where I can also be part of a community and be like anybody else, and participate in all the political aspects of the country, of Canada, my next country, and that's what I was super happy. Yeah. Like this local Canadian Oshawa family got in touch with someone in the US who knew me, and they're just like willing to say, oh, we'll be happy to present to a church and see if the church will accept to sponsor him. And that's how they sponsored me.
Those people were Bill and Marilyn James, who presented Oliver's case to the Freeway Methodist Church that sponsored him. They fondly remember his first days in Canada.
One of the interesting things I found when Oliver first came to Canada and he came into our home, and we just said to him as he came in our front door, Oliver, your bedroom is in the basement. He says, okay, that's fine. It took him maybe an hour later. What's a basement?
Oh, that's right, because you don't even think, right?
No.
I mean,
Yeah. We had a dog, a collie, and he was dumbfounded at how people would take their dogs for a walk.
Oh, yeah.
Because that never
That doesn't,
happens.
yeah.
You know, they run wild or they're eaten, and yet we invest in pets,
Yeah.
you know. So we made him take the dog for a walk to prove that he was becoming Canadian, right? Right?
Hockey, the dog walk, there you go.
Right.
He survived, and so did the dog.
While they taught Oliver the basics of Canadian living, he's also brought a deeper perspective to their lives.
I would say sometimes we're in North America a little comfortable, and he's willing to put his left foot forward. He's willing to step out and to try new things and to accomplish new things, and he's still doing that. And he's an encouragement and an example to all of us in how he has persevered in so many ways, and not always just sit back and say take no for an answer.
His
Find out for
resilience,
yourself, yeah.
his resilience too, and that his philosophy or his focus, his thoughts about life is that we all will have hardship. So then it makes me think, you know, when hardship comes our way, why should I be saying why me? That's part of the human race. We all will have hardship, but his resilience and that you just go on and you do not isolate yourself. You use your community, your friends to help you through it.
And shortly after being sponsored, he found love.
I remember, once, the pressure was off and, we were able to just talk and just we realized like there was so much that we had in common, and that was really just what, what drew me to Oliver, and how, how much love you have for other people as well as for your people.
It's quite nice. And then we got married, so.
Exactly. The pie, so it was from the pie, grandpa, and then the call, and then praying, and then meeting, and then the pie, and then from the pie to wedding.
And I asked him to share.
That was a year later, right?
Yeah.
I asked him to share. I'm like, so how did you propose? He's like, I asked her to marry me, and she said, sure. I wanted details.
While Oliver has embraced his new life, he's committed to the cause back in the Congo. In 2016, he helped sponsor his 5 other sisters and parents who now live in Chicago. He's currently working to sponsor his other sister in Malawi. And him and his wife have developed the Msenwa Foundation since then that helps widows and orphans in refugee camps across the country. survivor may have escaped Congo during a period of turmoil, but it's still a country grappling to survive. Yet despite the harrowing tales of the Congo and its civilians, is a place rich in resources and culture.
When you look at Congo, I think something that people need to understand is despite the images of poverty that you often see associated with it, Congo's national territory contains more than 1,100 different mineral substances, including the largest known diamond resources in the world in terms of carats. It accounts for 25% of the world's total known reserves of diamonds. The southern reaches of the country contain 34% of the cobalt and 10% of the copper reserves in the world. One finds 64% of the world's coltan reserves, as well as cassiterite, which is an important ore from which tin is extracted. If you look at areas like Ituri, which has been a historically area quite plagued by conflict over the last 25 years, there are vast deposits of gold there. So though Congo on the surface may look very poor, for some people it's turned out to be very lucrative and very rich.
And it's this quest to extract resources, the ones often used to power our phones and devices, that has often justified Congo's invasion.
Congo, unfortunately, has had the misfortune to be pillaged by outsiders for a lot of its history. I mean, first, obviously, the most obvious example is King Leopold of Belgium, who created the Congo Free State, which was anything but free. And over other times, you had different mercenary armies in the 1960s and 70s. In the 1990s, following the Rwandan genocide, the Rwandan army invaded the country and helped put Laurent Kabila in power. And they basically, the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front elite, Paul Kagame, basically paid for the reconstruction of Rwanda by looting mineral resources out of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Uganda helped themselves to it as well, as did Zimbabwe, as did Angola. There were, many foreign armies and foreign combatants fighting in what we call the Congo Civil War. So I think that's something that's important for people to understand why this country has the pull for outsiders that it does. Pull for outsiders who often don't necessarily have Congo's best interests at heart. I would say that even since the end of the formal civil war, or what we call the Great Congo War, on large areas of Congo, there has not been what we would call peace. I mean, you still have large degrees of violence in places like Katanga, in places like Ituri, and North Kivu, and South Kivu. The government of Joseph Kabila, which has ruled the country since 2001, has created a patronage base rather than a political base. In other words, it has created a network of people around the country who are dependent kind of on the largesse of the president's political party and the president personally in order to benefit from them. And so what you have, in some ways, I would say, the current government of Congo looks at the citizens of Congo in much the same way that the colonial rulers looked at the citizens of Congo, as subjects rather than citizens. And that's a real problem that goes to the heart of the issues today.
Congo will be holding their next elections in December and will see the end of Joseph Kabila's 17-year presidency, a move that is predicted to bring major change to the country. While Oliver's story is a reminder that he's still with us, so too are the scars of his past and present Congo.
I grew up in a family where love prevailed, and I was loved. My community was very relational, engaged in everybody's life, and even when I was a child, I was told good people go through tough times, and human beings become stronger. It's like gold. Like if you want gold or diamond, if you want to have pure diamond or anything, you have to go through fire.